Hello, everyone, and welcome back. Today, I'm going to be going over a couple of details about Imperial Beach regarding the landscape and the traffic and a couple of other bad features down there. It was actually a good thing that the EPA stepped in and started cleanup, started restrictions for both for wastewater. In Spanish, it's called aguas negras, and in English, it's the raw sewage, I should say, and also for the animals, so that way to protect them also from contamination. Sometimes it wasn't always a good thing for us, for our tactics, for our equipment. So we did bump heads. We did have restrictions. We did have limited access to certain areas, no access to other certain areas. But to be honest, it was needed, and it was a good thing for the EPA to step in this time. Not always, but we didn't always see eye to eye, but somebody needed it to take control because it was really out of control. So when they name an actual area of town by its name, it's for a reason. And this particular area was named the Tijuana River Valley. And it is a river valley because the river went through that valley. But as humans came in, they started moving in. And in San Diego, it can go a whole year without raining. So you have no problem. Everything's dry and everything. But when the rains come, it floods the whole area down. There's no escaping it. There's no other way. And along with that, the way the stream goes down the river into the ocean, raw sewage from Mexico started coming in to the U.S. and trickling down the river, contaminating the water, hitting the ocean, and not really getting pushed out fast enough to clean itself. We all know the ocean can clean itself, but when you actually mix in with wildlife and then humans, can become a problem, especially for mosquitoes. And I needed to get specific vaccinations that weren't on already on my vaccination sheet. And I had just come off in the army. In the army, they rebooted. They they made sure I had all the vaccinations that they were gonna have on record. So I had to get double sometimes. Because when growing up, you got your vaccinations, so you got to double as you trickled into the army. So I had to get the extra ones that were required down there for specific diseases down there. And there were plenty of them. And also, when you make contact with migrants who carry certain diseases, that's another precaution we also had to take care of. So, as you can see in the illustration, I want to tell you that that's the way it looks now, all the green, and hoping it looks like that now. But one can only hope. And at the very southwest end, you can see how the fence overrides the land into the ocean. It's actually all the way into the ocean barriers. And also on the south side of Tijuana, that's called Playas, there's also a bull ring to fight bulls. It's not a rodeo, it's a bull ring to fight matador. What they call matadors. They actually conduct real life bullfights there. And on the other side, you can see there's a canyon there. That's a bunker that was installed during World War II in case the Japanese invaded California like they did Pearl Harbor. So that bunker has actual rail tracks that were used just in case they needed to re up on ammo. That was rail track set in place to deliver ammunition to that bunker. Pretty deep too. It's all graffiti now and everything, but it is still there. It was a live bunker. So that happened too. And the United States tried to put pressure on Mexico for them to allow them to build a road from California through Baja, through Mexico. They said something about ammunition, but Mexico stood their ground and said no. Well, actually, probably it wasn't the right amount of money. Let's be honest here, it wasn't enough amount of money for that particular political group. So they told them no, they didn't allow them to actually run a road through there. And that's a good thing because that's where you see all the Baja roads, and the Baja roads are pretty big. They are actually pretty big down there, and they're pretty long in distance too for the race. And it takes quite a while because you have different vehicle categories. So if you ever go down there during the Baja, you can just set up shop, find yourself a nice little spot, and just set up camp, and you can watch all the vehicles go through there 24 hours. Because these races, they're 24 hours. They have their night drivers, they have their day drivers. So each team is prepared for the worst. And if they get stuck and you've got an off-road vehicle, you're able to get that race car out. Boom, you're getting some cold hard cash in your hand right there, and they'll continue their actual their race. It's actually a good time. So now, when you have certain amount of yards in between each vehicle, as you can see, I put vehicles that are kind of lined up facing south. That's what I meant when Gatekeeper came in. They would actually position certain vehicles in certain spots, and then some yards, and then again another vehicle. That's what I meant by stationary. And I just want to reiterate that the information I'm giving out right now, it's all public knowledge. That's not how the actual vehicles are lined up. And I am no way giving any kind of instructions or actually any ideas of how to cross there. I have none of that information for you, and I wouldn't even reveal it anyways if I did have it. So that is how you would actually just line up vehicles, and they can see one each other, but they're kind of spread apart, so that way they can actually see if anybody or anything is getting through there while they're on shift. So these vehicles will stationary sit there the entire shift. If you apprehend somebody, if you come into contact with somebody, you call it in, transport picks it up, they take it back for processes. And each station does not have permanent holding cells. They have holding open cells that are for groups. They don't have individual cells. So if once they process you and everything, transport would come by and pick you up and take you to your destination. And everybody had a different destination, so either you would actually get processed into the actual immigration court, or you would just get released down south, or taken state by the state if you were on parole, if they were looking for you, if you owe time for prison time, if you're on parole, they'd they'd hand you off to a state agency, and then they'd take you to your destination. If you want it locally by sheriffs, they'll take you in. They'll drop you off at the county jail and go on their way. So now, the other illustration that I put up is back to when you develop a river valley, you have to expect to get flood. There's a mountain on the other side, and there's all the rain from the south end of the county actually trickles down through there, making it very, very wet. So people bought land down there. People developed some farms, livestock. They made a living with livestock down there, and through time, just it wasn't profitable just because the fact that you were always losing at some point, and it didn't rain every year in San Diego. Don't get me wrong. We did have our dry spells, and it was fine. But once it rained, there was nowhere for the actual water to run but to the ocean. So that's where it went down. So you had to be prepared to always be careful where you stepped, especially at night, because these groups would lay up and it'd be dark. It'd be smelly. It'd be uncomfortable for the mosquitoes, for the bugs, anything that grows, it would grow there. So you had to be very, very careful to protect yourself because at any point you could just turn the corner and there'd be a group laid up and startle you fast. It happened to you were never alone on foot. It happened to us a couple times, and there was heavy brush, almost like a what is it called? Sugar cane, that type of brush, and come around the corner, and it'd be a hollowed off space, and there'd be a group of 20, and there's just two of you. But the majority of them, they're not streetwise. They're just trying to cross, trying to get a better life for themselves. So you would you can tell somebody's already been into lived in the U.S., has already been to the jail system. You can tell by the way they carry themselves. So you knew who to hey, keep up a little bit of your attention on that particular person because they're the ones that actually will get something going, and most of them will probably follow. So you just had to be very, very careful. And you also had to be very, very careful actually driving along the line. And at some points, at some stations, we had to actually put the actual like almost like a gate door on the windshield on the windows to protect you from rock throwers. And when that happened, you get protected by the shields, the metal shields, and we'd call it in. We'd actually had communications with a certain group down south that was almost like a like a what do they call ERTs, emergency response team, like an ERT to actually respond to that certain section of the border and just push away the rock throwers. And they, for the most part, they did handle their business, and they were trusted to a certain point, and they had our frequency. We actually created a frequency with them to communicate with each other. So I mean, they they were pretty cool. They're pretty honest. I mean, there was nothing to gain there, so I mean, they just kept to their own, and they needed backup or we needed backup. It would work both ways. So the road that actually runs to go to the bull ring from the port in on the south side is one road. So it's a straight shot, but there's a big hills. You can see on Google. There's big hills and there's big drops, big hills and big drops. So that made it kind of hard for the border fence to go up. But with time, they got it right, and not everything lasts for a while, especially when they're taking it apart or chopping at it on the south side. So you always had to keep up on see if they were trying to make a hole or just damages to get their people or their product across. And this is not official. It's not official. I never seen it on paper, but I was told that directly on one of them hills, there was a house, and they called it the blockhouse. The old block from the Cold War. It was that type of house, and it made sense because it had numerous satellites and CCT cameras on the roof. So I never been inside there. I never met anybody from that house, so I can't tell you for sure that it is. But that's what it was referred to, and it was actually a section where that house is right across the street, where they would call it actual, the old blockhouse and the trail that it would lead out of. It was true. It made sense. It really did make sense. So that's just another story. They'll give you a little bit more of a bigger picture on how it was down there, and that would be considered actually Imperial Beach. Okay, till next time. In this South City, a 6 mile stretch from the port to the actual end of the beach, the 6 miles. So that was open order, and that's Border Patrol took care of that. And eventually, they did build a sewage plant, so you could actually uh, see the actual plan, and they caught all of it, but they didn't catch all of the actual raw sewage. Okay, guys, so don't forget to